Staff, Akosia Fremosel Parry, has directed the Controller and Accountant General to deduct at source 30% from salaries of government appointees into the consolidated fund. The move forms part of austerity measures to cut down on government expenditure to shore up the ailing economy. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, we know, after a pediatric crunch meeting, announced a raft of measures to address the ailing economy. Now, beyond these salary cuts, there are other measures, in this particular directive, which has been issued by the Chief of Staff. We'll get into all of that. Dennis is still here with me. Dennis, run us through the other measures that have been spoken of.
Well, so these are things that we've heard before, but this time around, the directive has come very clear. For instance, that there should be a cut, in 50% cut in fuel allocation. This was supposed to take effect the beginning of this month. This letter was written on the 19th of March. I wonder how it's supposed to take effect beginning of the month when the directive came on the 19th. That's just beside the point. There's also the issue about 50% in budget allocation for vehicle purchase. What it means is that if you had purchased to buy a certain number of vehicles, now you're supposed to halve that. Beyond that, all those vehicles are supposed to be procured locally. That would also have to be done in consultation with the Chief of Staff. And then there's also the point about suspension of foreign travels. The Chief of Staff has been very critical on that matter, that for all the travels that were planned for the year, they have to be submitted to the Office of the Chief of Staff. Justification has to be made. For those that are critical, then the people will be allowed to embark on those travels. In fact, she has attached to this particular directive a checklist that should be able to measure the standard of how serious the trip would be before it will be allowed to go. So if that justification is made, of course, they will be allowed to embark on that travel. Aside that, there's a suspension on foreign travels. There's also the thing about MDAs and the MMDAs trying to, or putting in an effort to eliminate all ghost workers, or the names we call ghost names. That has to be done as soon as possible. And every month, they have to report to the Office of the Chief of Staff. They do a head count and report just so they know the number of people who are actually working in that space. So those are some of the things that have actually come up again for implementation this time around.
Right. Dennis Wedam is with the News Planning Department. Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie, economist with the Institute for Fiscal Studies, is joining us for a conversation. Thank you, Doc, for joining us. So is it good enough for a start, at least, that 30% of the salaries are being cut of government appointees and other MMDA officials as we look to deal with the economic crunch that we find ourselves in? Hello, Dr. Sarkodie.
Yes, it says here, government wants to ensure fiscal consolidation, and fiscal consolidation is about increasing revenue. So they have passed the e-levy, they have revised the 50% benchmark values, and also to reduce expenditure. And most of the expenditure items are rigid in themselves. Government cannot reduce
I'm afraid we're losing the connection to Dr. Sarkodie there. We'll be working the line subsequently to get back through to him so we have that conversation. He was just helping us understand if it is a good enough step as we have it now for 30% of the salaries of government appointees and other MMDA staff to be deducted at source by the Controller and Accountant General's Department.